Hi everyone, this is Matthew again with Megabaits. Today I wanted to walk through the new UI of Megabaits 2.0, so let's get started. Alright, so when you first launch the application, this will be the screen you're greeted with. Now there's really only one screen with the new UI. There aren't any separate tabs or anything like that as was the case with the previous version. So this is what you'll be greeted with. The first message you'll see at the top is that your license is not yet activated. So with the new version, we're going to have to insert that license key again. Now this is either the license key that you used to activate your previous version of Megabaits, or if you're brand new to Megabaits and you don't know what I'm talking about with the previous version, this will be the key that you got in your email address after either getting a free trial or purchasing your license. So after you get that license key, you go up here to license management in the toolbar, and you'll just go to activate license and then paste that key in this text box and click activate. Once that goes through, Megabaits will be nice and happy that it's activated. Your expiration date will be populated up here at the top, and then you should be good to go. So you can see that this text box is no longer editable and that activate button went away. That's how you know everything's good. Also down here, your license activated successfully message will pop up in this bottom box. All right, with the license, you also have the opportunity to release the license. So if in the future you wanted to use your Megabaits license on a separate computer, you can release it from this one and then use that same license key to again activate on that other computer. You can only have one copy of Megabaits activated with a single license key at a time. So if you tried to use that license key on a separate computer and try to activate it, it's not going to let you do it because it's already been tied to one computer. So very important to release that license from your previous computer before trying to use it on a second machine. All right, this last option down here is just to launch our shop page on our website. If you're interested in buying a new license for a new machine or yours is expiring soon, you can go ahead and click that and that'll launch up for you. Other than that, that's all that the license management section has on the menu bar. Let's just go ahead and go through the other options on the menu bar just to kind of explore the UI a little bit. So under File, we have Open Config. So this will allow you to completely configure your Megabaits, and then you can save the config. So all of the data you've inserted, all of the settings you've inputted, you can save all of that to a file. And then in the future, if you ever need to run some more documents, you don't have to repopulate all of those boxes again. You can just import the saved config that you created, and all of the information will be populated for you. So super nifty there. That's something that I really wanted to include in the new version because I was getting tired myself having to type in every time the information into all of those fields. All right, so the third button here is to import your documents. So this is one of the options to import documents into Megabaits. You can either click this and get the standard Windows Explorer window where you can select files, or you can also just drag and drop files into this gray box here from anywhere. So that's another improvement that we have. And then previously we had buttons to rearrange the files. Now it's just a drag and drop kind of thing. So if you, for example, wanted this picture file, this PNG to be first, you can grab it and drag it into that first position there to reorder them. Now the reordering is really only important if you are inserting a page number somewhere that spans all of the documents. So if that's the case and that the order of the imports matters, that's how you reorder in the new UI. Okay, under View, we have a few different options here. So we actually have the opportunity to set a custom preview document. So if you'd rather see maybe one of your documents as the preview document that gets updated with the information you're inserting in real time, you can go ahead and click this button and choose a specific document to use as the preview, or you can reset it to the default, which is what we're looking at right now. All right, what else is under View? So we have either display full preview page, so this is what we're currently doing. We see the full page of the document. If you wanted to see a slightly more zoomed in version, you can click that option, and then that gives you a little bit more of a closer look at the data you're inserting. It doesn't make much sense now, but if we were to insert some data, I'll just do that quickly, we can actually get a better view of that data that we insert. So let me go ahead and just put it back to the full page, and we will continue from there. I'll clear this for now. We'll come back to it. Under Settings, this is where you can limit Megabaits to the number of documents that you want it to process simultaneously. This is by default set to 2/3 of the number of CPU cores that you have in your system. You don't really have to change this unless you're really familiar with the workload you're going to be processing. In most situations, the default will be perfectly fine. You don't have to change this. All right, we went through license management, so let's jump over to help. Under the about, it'll just have a build date. So this version was built on the 29th of July. So this is kind of just the version you have. This is the value that it checks with our update server. And then we also have this contact us section here. If you click this top one, it'll launch the contact us page on our website. It also has our 24/7 support phone number listed here as well. In case you're using Megabaits offline, this will always be here available for you. There will be one more menu item up here at the top if an update is available. So if Megabaits detects that there's an update, one more update button will show up here. You can click that to launch the update. But right now we are up to date, so that's why we're not seeing that. So just keep that in mind. That's where your updates will live. They'll be up there as well. Okay, so we finished the toolbar. Let's go ahead and go to the actual UI. Now on this left side, this is where all your imported documents will be listed. Again, I mentioned the drag and drop for reordering. You have a clear button down here if you want to just get rid of all of your documents. You can click that. Over here on the right, this is where all of the output status messages will be listed. So if we complete the processing of a file, it will say finish this document, finish that document, and it'll just have status updates over here. Mirrored with the clear button is the go button. So this is how you'll initiate the processing after you've defined all of your information and set all of your settings. That's how you kick off the process. All right, in the center here, this is where most of the magic happens. On the left side, we have zone placement. Previous versions of Megabaits had 6 zones as well, and you can place them all at the top, at the bottom, or split like we have here. No different with Megabaits 2.0. You can have them split as we're seeing now. You can have all 6 fields on the top. You can have all 6 fields on the bottom. So that's how you change that. Over here on the right are just some output options. So similar to the previous version, we have prep for double-sided printing. Again, what this does is it'll add an extra blank page at the end of a document if the document had an odd page count. Really helpful if you're going to merge all of the documents into a single PDF for sending to a printer, for example. You don't want the first page of a document being printed on the back of the last page of your previous document, which can happen easily if you merge odd numbered page count documents. So that's what that's doing. And then again, we have our add 3 hole punch margin. So what that does is it creates some more space to accommodate printing on 3 hole punch paper. You don't want to print over the holes, so it gives us a little more space. If you have both of these checked in conjunction, it's also going to alternate which side that margin is created on to accommodate the double-sided printing. We have our option to generate a Bates index. What this does is it creates an Excel compatible CSV file, just listing all of your documents and also listing the first Bates label that was inserted and the last Bates label that was inserted into that document. So super helpful for creating your exhibit list. Now on the previous version of Megabaits, there was actually a specific Bates label field that we can define. But in this new UI, we don't really see anything like that. So I'll come back to this, but in the new version, we'll have to tell it which zone to treat as a Bates label. So a little bit of foreshadowing there. We'll be back with that here in a second. All right, we have our force output page size, which again, we can say, I want all of my output to be letter sized. So if I check that, we can see that this used to be a legal size page. It shrunk it down to fit onto the letter paper, and similar with the ledger. Now we can also say I'm fine with it being legal. So if we choose to accept legal, we can see that the legal document gets shrunk down a little bit, but it's still on a legal sheet of paper, and it's really being shrunk down because of that 3 hole punch margin. But the letter, it's perfectly happy to stay on a letter size page. So we have a little bit more choice here as opposed to the previous one, where we can also just say I want everything on legal if you want. So that's a new option that we have with Megabaits 2.0. All right, I think I'll force everything to letter for this example. All right, and then finally we have a new option, include merged PDF. So what this will do is, along with the individual documents that get processed, the final step, it'll just take all of those processed documents and just merge them into a single PDF in the order that you imported them. So I think I'll go ahead and check that. Now a little message pops up here asking you if you're intending to print double-sided, make sure that this is set If you click yes, it'll automatically check this box for you. If you won't say no and you're not going to print double-sided, you have that option as well to not select that, but I'll go ahead and click yes for this example. All right, so those are the output options. Let's actually jump into defining a zone now. So let's go ahead and go with zone A. So this is the new designer window. So rather than having separate types of data that you can create, everything's going to be done under this same designer window. So the goal with this designer is to define a series of cells with the data that we want to include. Now, the data can either be multi-row or it can be a single row. It can have one column. It can have multiple columns. So just think of a Bates label as usually having a single row, right? But a Bates label can have several different elements that we want to add. So I think for this example, I'll go ahead and say we want 7 elements in our Bates label. Now, we can see that 7 cells popped up here. We have 1 through 7, and this is where we're going to start inserting some of our elements. So let's go ahead and take a look over here to our toolbox. Our toolbox has every type of data that we can insert. So it has static text if we just want to add something that doesn't change Bates label to Bates label, like a prefix or a suffix or a separator or anything like that. That's what the static text is for. We can insert a page number that dynamically gets updated each time we're on a new page. A file name, we have an alphabetic document identifier and a numeric document identifier. What these do is they just increment document to document, either alphabetically or numerically. We have a new underline data type. I'll come back to that in a second, and a row spacer and a column spacer. So I'll come back to these as well. So let's just try to build a standard Bates label. So I think I'll start with a static text, which will be our prefix. So we click and drag that into one of our cells. If we click on it, this little editor will pop up over here on the right that we can define the properties of our static text. So right now the content is reading static text, but I want this to be a prefix. So for this example, I'll just put the letters PRE, and I want to include a period separator, so I'll just include that as well. We don't really have to worry about this column span and this justification section for a Bates label. Those would be really helpful for exhibit stickers or other custom data. So we'll gloss over that for now, but we'll come back to it. All right, and then here we can define our font and our font color. I think I want this to be bold, and that looks good to me, so I'll go ahead and click confirm. So we have our prefix there. So the next element I want to include, let's say, is a page number. We can define how many digits we want in our page number and where to start counting. So we see that total, we inserted 4 digits, so our page number is going to have 4 digits in it, and we're starting at 1. So if I wanted to start at 5, we can update that. If I only wanted 3 digits, we can get rid of one of the zeros padding it. But I think for this example, I'll just leave it at 1 because that makes the most sense. Again, we'll gloss over this column span and justification for now. Now for a page number, we have the option to use the number format similar to the last version of Megabates. What this will do is it'll just say, this is page 1 of n. So however many pages we have, it'll just say 1 of 27, 1 of 172, something like that. All right, and then we also have the option to, again, number sequentially across all the documents. So that's where I was mentioning previously that the order of the documents mattered that you imported. So I think I'll select both of those, and I think I want the entire Bates label to be bold, so I'll just choose that for each of our elements. All right, so after the page number, I think I just want a static separator of a period just to separate our data. Again, we'll select bold. After that, I think I want to include some information from the file name. And in this top box is where you can define the character indices that you want to import from the file name. So say, for example, I only wanted the first 3 letters of the file name into this field. If we take a look here, we have war/peace. So if I use the first 3 letters, we'll get WAR in this field. And then for this one, the first 3 letters are 3, 3, and 5. So that's what will be inserted for that document for this file name zone. All right, again, bold this, and then I want another separator here. And then I think I want a document identifier. I think I'll use a numeric one here. So we're going to start here at 1 with 4 digits in our document identifier. This is very similar to a page number for those of you who aren't familiar. It'll just increment per document. So For all of the pages of the first document, we'll have a 1, and then for all of the pages of the second document, we'll have a 2. So it'll automatically increment there. All right, so we'll bold that, and then finally just a suffix I'll put here. So dot suffix. All right, I'll spell it out. I won't be lazy. Okay, so, and we'll bold that. All right, so this is our Bates label. So we have a prefix, we have a page number, we have a separator, we have a file name, another separator, a numeric document identifier, and then our suffix. Let's go over here to the right and we'll take a look at what these settings are talking about. All right, so let's come back to zone separation here in a second. So for the justification, this is currently set to center. Now this justification is relative to the zone that we are in. So remember, a zone gets a third of the width of the page. So zone A will be the first third, zone B will be the second third, and then zone C will be the rightmost third of the document. So that's how much space that it gets, and that's what these justifications are relative to. So I think for this case, since we are on the top left, I'll go ahead and left justify. Let me go ahead and click out of this. We can see where we're at with our formatting. So once we click out of that, we see all of the data that we've inserted here. So the preview document has a file name behind the scenes of preview all sizes, I believe. So that's why we're getting the first 3 letters as PRE, not to be confused with the prefix. Sorry, that might be a little bit confusing. Maybe I'll spell out prefix here so we don't have any issues with that. All right. Now this this leftmost section, again, remember, is this 3-hole punch margin that we've inserted. So if I get rid of that, we can see that the Bates label is left justified to zone A. If I were to right justify it to zone A, you got to be real careful with this because the right justification is relative to this zonal boundary here. So it'll start here and grow left. Even if it's too long, it'll print off the side of the page. So we got to be careful with that. So if we left justify it, again, it might intrude a little bit into zone B because you can have something left justified in zone A that spans the whole page if that's what you're wanting. All right, so that is a Bates label. Inclusion settings here. You can have this Bates label inserted on all pages of all documents. You can have it inserted on odd pages, on even pages, on just the first page, on just the last page, or even a custom range of pages. So you can give like a 1 through 8 here. To only include it on the first 8 pages. And I think I can give a better example of this if I give 1 through 3. You can see it's on the first page, it's on the second page, it's on the third page, but starting on the 4th page, it's not there because it wasn't included in that custom range. So that's what that custom is doing, but I think I want it on all pages in this example. So that's what we'll do. All right, what else is there? Oh, and then we have the option to include a sticker background. So this is obviously our Bates label, but if I were to select this sticker background, we can see that it adds a background with a background color. We can change it to any color that we want. We can also change the color that the border is. So if we wanted like a blue border for some reason, we can do that, a red border, magenta, anything that we want. So we have all of these options. Then we also have the options to change the border width. So we can change it to 5 and we see that it's a more pronounced border. And then we also can change the corner radius. So the higher the number here, the rounder the corners are. So if I give like a 15, you can see it's quite round here. And the smaller the number, the less round it is. So if I give a 0, it's basically just a rectangular sticker. So that's what these settings do. All right, but this is our Bates label, so I don't want to include a sticker background. So I think we are good to go. The only last thing was the zone separation here. And the easiest way to show that is if I right justify and then I just add some data into zone B, left justified. So if we take a look here at the separation between zones A and B, we can see that the end of zone A and the beginning of zone B are literally right on top of each other, or right next to each other rather. There isn't any space in between those. So if you want to force just some manual space between those two zones, you can give a small value here. It'll move this over just a hair right. So you can put a zone separation of both of those, and then it just gives a little bit of space separation there. Manual adjustments. So that's what that little box is for. I think I'll put this back to 0 for now. Again, this one to 0, and we're left justifying this. All right. The last thing on here is this file button at the top left. Now, one new piece that we've added for Megabaits 2.0 is the ability to save a specific zone to a file. So say you spent a whole bunch of time defining your zone and you want to save this to a file so that you can use it in the future. You can save that zone to a file, and then you can re-import it at a later time with the open. This is also a good way to move data from one zone to another. Say I define all of this in zone A, but I actually wanted this in zone D. You can save it to a file, and then you can go to zone D, and then you can open that zone into zone D, and it'll populate everything for you. And I think I can show that for you real quick. All right, so I imported that into zone D, but because we actually had a name defined of A, it actually took that name with us. So if we were to define a zone title, and I'm not sure I mentioned this, but for organizational purposes, you can call this whatever you want. So Baits label, and then that button gets updated with that name. And then if I were to clear the zone here, it goes back to D. Okay, so I think that was a base label. Let's try to create a simple sticker now. So let's go to zone E, and we'll do a sticker. All right, so I think I'm gonna have 4 rows and 4 columns in my sticker. Let me go ahead and just call this sticker, so after we click out, we know where our sticker is at. And actually, I think I'm gonna start with 3 by 3. I think that'll be better. All right, so we inserted a static text into the first cell here. We want it to read exhibit. All right, and we want it to be bold, underline. Maybe we want it, a little bit bigger because it's the title of our sticker. All right, so what happens if we wanted this to span the entire top of the sticker rather than being in this first column here? So that's what this column span setting is doing. So right now it's just set to 1. So the column or the cell is only spanning a single column. If I were to increase this to 2, we can see that that exhibit cell is now encompassing 2 columns. So if I wanted this centered on the entire sticker, we can have it span all the columns of the sticker, and then it's at the top. So that's what that column span is doing. These justifications are there to adjust the justification within the cell. So for the horizontal justification, for example, right now it's centered over its entire cell. If I hit left, it's going to be at the leftmost section of the cell, but it's still spanning all 3 columns, and similar for right, but I think we'll leave it as center. And then maybe we wanted some subtext in the second line. We can just say this might be for the defense. And again, we want it to span all 3 cells. And then finally, let's say we wanted to handwrite a date or something. So we can say this is the date in a static field. We want some sort of underline section that allows us to handwrite something. And then maybe we want to put this was the date that this was inserted into evidence. I don't know. So I'm just coming up with this as we go. So we can see that we've created kind of a plan for our sticker. Now, it's important to realize that the designer and the actual data that's inserted onto the page don't always look one-to-one. This is meant to be a convenient way of inserting the data you want. It's not always going to translate perfectly to the data that's inserted on the document. So that's important to keep in mind. We go ahead and enable our sticker background here. All right, so if we click into this underline field that we have inserted, right now this is defined based off of the sizes of the other data in all of the other cells. What we can do is we can actually force it to be a specific length. Say we want a specific amount of space to be able to write. So that's what this minimum length value does. This width, again, you can make this a thicker line, you can make it a thinner line. I think I'll leave it as 2. And then column span we've already gone over, and then again you can change the color of the line if you want. There are 2 other things here. There's a respect left cell boundary and a respect right cell boundary. Maybe I'll come back to these here in a second. But let me click out of this so we can see kind of where we are at with our sticker. Okay, so this is our first line. We have exhibit, and then we have defense, and then we have date, EV, and then our underline. So right now it looks a little bit too condensed, right? Everything's a little close to each other. So what I wanted to do, let's start with adding a little bit of space between our text and our underline, but we can just add a space character after that one. We can add a space character before that one. Click out of this. Now that's looking better. The amount of space between defense and exhibit is actually bothering me, right? They're kind of touching. So let's see what we can do about that. All right, so to me this looks fine in the editor, but again, when we go and look at the preview, it's not what we want. So how can we fix that? So what I'm going to do is I want to take advantage of this row spacer option. So we don't really have any available cells to take this row spacer and drop it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add one more column. So what we can do is we can either just increase that to 4, or I can right click and insert column right. And we have a new column here that we can start putting stuff in. All right, so this row spacer is specifically to force a row to be a specific size. So if I were to click into that, we have the option to set a specific height. I think I'll give it a height of maybe 30. And now if we click out of this with this row spacer, we have a good amount of space between defense and the exhibit and the third line here. So these row and column spacers are very powerful in that way. If you need to force it to look a specific way, you can insert these row and column spacers. All right, so for this border width, to me it looks a little thin, so I'm going to go ahead and increase it maybe to a 4, not a 40, a 4. Corner radius looks fine to me, and to me this is looking fine. Let's just try to play with the column spacer just so we can see how those work. To me, the amount of space between the border and the date, maybe I can increase this a little bit. And just to make it look a little bit nicer, let's see what we can do. So I can insert a column left. Again, I right clicked on something that was in previously the first column and just said insert column left. And then we already have a column right that we can play with. So I think I'm just going to insert a column spacer here and a column spacer here. And what we can do is we can just give this, I want 4 extra units of space on the left and the right. And then we can see, again, that forced the border of the stickers a little bit wider. So there are endless possibilities with this new sticker and custom data design system. So you can get it looking exactly the way you need it. If you have very specific requirements, hopefully you can create anything that comes out in the wild for you. This should be able to handle. All right, and then again, I had mentioned that we have both horizontal and vertical justifications we can use. So in this case where we force the row to be a specific width, this defense is now in the center of that space, right? So we can actually set it to the top. It moves it back up to where it was previously, right under exhibit. We can put it back in the center, which is where it was, or we can put it at the bottom. Just whatever you need it to be, we have those options available for you. All right, again, you have that file, so you spend a whole bunch of time setting up this. You can save it, you can move it to a different zone. All of those things are there for you. All right, so let's take a look at these respect left and right cell boundary options here. I kind of glossed over them earlier. These are very helpful if you have an underline between 2 other types of data that aren't necessarily up against the cell boundary. And what I mean by that, let me see if I can give a better example here. So let me add one more row below. And then if I were to, for some reason, add some sort of column spacer here, giving this a really wide column, and I'll do the same for this one as well, 65. And if I get out of here, we can see that there is a whole bunch of space here between the date and the underline element. So the goal of these 2 options is to allow you to, and this is very specific to the underline, this is the only thing that can do that, allow this to encroach on another cell's area just to make it a continuous line from this data to the next data. So we can do it in 2 stages. One is respect the left cell boundary. So if we remove this option, it's not going to update in the designer, but when we go out of here, this underline is going to extend all the way up to the border of the actual data in date. So let me click out of here. We can see that the align has now extended to be right next to the end of that data. And the reason it's not exactly aligned is because I think we had a space here. Yeah. So if we get rid of that, again, it's right up against it, but I think we'll keep that space. There we go. All right. And again, if this is even left justified in its cell, it's gonna go all the way over there. So we can see even if we left justify or center, that that underline is going to be aligned with that data. Same for this one. If we tell it, no, don't care about the right cell boundary of the underline, again, it'll extend all the way to the EV as well. All right, the last thing I wanted to talk about was, again, if we go back up here to File and Open Config and Save Config As. So after you set up everything about your document, all of your zone placements, all of your output settings, you can save all of that information to a single file and then open it in the future if you need to run some more documents. So you can save it and then re-import all of that information. You don't have to import each individual zone. All of that information will be kept in that one file. You just load it and go. All right, so I think that's all I needed to talk about here. I think the only thing that we need to do is talk about this index zone, and then we'll go and process. So I had talked that since all of these types of editors really don't differ data type to data type, so this is our Bates label, but how does the program know that this is actually a Bates label, right? So if we want to tell Megabates which zone to use when generating the Bates index, that's what we do here. So we can choose any of our 6 zones. Right now we've just defined a Bates label in zone A, but we renamed it. That's why there's no A. And then sticker was in zone E, but we renamed it. All right. So if I go ahead and choose zone A, or our Bates label in this case, that's the zone that will be used to populate the first and last Bates index, or Bates labels in our index. If we were to choose the sticker, and this is a little bit strange, like how would we put this into our index? What the program will do is it'll just take all of the text fields that we've inserted and put them in the index with line breaks. So the first line will have exhibit, the second line will have defense, the third line will have date EV. So this underline isn't going to be included because it's not a text option. It's not a text field. All right. So that's how it'll handle that. But it gives you a lot of flexibility if that's something you would like to have, multi-line entry. It'll let you do that, no problem. All right, but I think I'm going to include our Bates label for this one. Okay, let me go ahead and click go and see how this processes. All right, so we clicked go, we chose a folder. The processing is getting initiated behind the scenes. It's doing some number crunching and it's processing and should be done here. Yep, done. We see that it finished both of our files. It created our merged PDF because we included that option. It created our Bates index, and then the processing was finished. So let me go ahead and open up those files. We can take a look at what was produced. Okay, so here is our first document. If we looked, we had War and Peace and 335861. And I've opened up the merge document here. So this is what the folder structure looks like. So we have our individual documents here, we have our merge document, and then we have our Bates index. So I've opened up this merge document to take a look at. We can see that the page number started at 1 and went all the way through 2044. And if I remember correctly, this War and Peace document has 2043 pages, and that last page is just the image file that we processed. So here's our Bates label, and here's that exhibit sticker that we defined. All right, so we can scroll through this and make sure everything's looking fine. And it's looking good. This last page of War and Peace got 2043, and then this first page of our image document that we processed after War and Peace got 2044. All right, this is looking good. This was our file name using the first 3 characters. This was our numeric document identifier that got incremented from the first document to the second. This is our suffix. This is our prefix. So yeah, everything is looking good. All right, let's take a look at the index. All right, so here's our index. We have the file names of the documents we processed in processing order, and the starting Bates. The first Bates label that we inserted in War and Peace started at page 1, and we used the number format, and we numbered across all documents, so that's why we get the 2044 there. Again, the first 3 characters of the file name we included, and our first numeric document identifier, and then same with our ending Bates. The last page was numbered 43 out of 44, and then again, nothing else changed here because this was a document identifier with a 1, and then we move on to our second document where we just got the last page 2044 of 2044 with that incremented numeric document identifier. All right, so I think that's all that I had here. I don't think we need to save that. So yeah, we're real excited to have this new user interface out. We're hoping that it's a lot more user-friendly and a little bit more sleek compared to the previous version. So once again, this is Matthew. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.